So let's move on and talk about portfolios. So, as I said, I don't have time to go into everything, but I'll hit some high level points. So, before you start applying to jobs, you must have a minimum of 3 case studies. If you are more advanced in your career, obviously you'll have more, but please, please keep in mind never have more than 6 case studies just for cognitive load for the hiring manager. You should always have your best work in your portfolio. This is not an archive of all the work you've done. This is the best work you've done that you want to showcase. Another thing to keep in mind is when you have your case studies, you might have had like school project, maybe you have some real client projects and different stuff, and they might be very all over the place as far as industry or problem being tackled. That's fine if you're not sure where you want to go, but let's say you want to focus on e-commerce or something like that. Then all your case studies should be around e-commerce. If you don't have those after boot camp, then do some volunteering or some pro bono work and get those e-commerce studies in there. We'll talk about that more later. But if you have an industry that you want to focus on, those should be your case studies. You want to make sure you have a compelling about me page. I was hoping to show some examples, but just didn't have enough time to keep it all in there. Um, but one thing I would suggest is just go look at other people's about me pages, portfolios, and are they drawing you in? And then learn from what you see. Like, I must admit, mine's not super exciting. I struggle with writing about myself. So I sort of did this like lame trick of putting a lot of pictures of me doing different things like traveling and stuff. And I'm like, well, that's me. But be creative there. You don't have to always tell like how I got into design, but you can if you can make it compelling. Practice, have other people read it and see if they're drawn in. You'll hear, tell me a story a lot. And unfortunately, I don't have time to go in the details of how to do that. Um, but good writing in any way, like make me want to read more. So your tagline is that thing where you say like, okay, here's my name on my portfolio, and then underneath that you might have 1 or 2 lines that you're a UX designer with empathy and focusing on business goals, and you work in San Francisco, California. So we're going to go through a couple examples. Um, it's really hard to do. I haven't succeeded myself, but I know others who have and have done a very good job. But this is really, really key to help you stand out. It's really important to have your own domain name. So it shouldn't be something like squarespace.yourname.com or uxfolio.yourname.com, Dribble, Behance, nothing like that. It should be like whatever you decide to call your website.com or .design. Definitely a lot more flexibility there than there used to be. Um, if you have a name that's like hard to pronounce, a lot of people have trouble with my last name. So, for example, my domain name is juliad.com. I just did my full name, Julia, with my last initial D. Of course, I wanted julia.com, but that was already taken. But I didn't want to put my full last name because people struggle with it. So, really think of something that's easy to say and pronounce and write so it's memorable and easy for people to enter. If you want to go by your first name and it's taken, you can do a few little tricks around it, such as UX by Jane or JaneUX.com. Do not put numbers or dashes in there. It just makes it more complicated for people to remember. You want it simple, easy to remember, easy to spell. I must admit, my first portfolio way back in the day, in the 90s, I was being all creative and I was like, oh, I want something that's like expresses who I am. And so I came up with the name Lambent Notions, LAMBENT NOTIONS.com, which means daydream. Yeah, no one could spell that. People are always asking if there was a hyphen, um, things like that. And it just didn't say that that was my website. It was like, do you write self help books or something like that? So, make sure it's clear. You can do actually, I think you can do .ux domains now as well. So just make it clear what you're going to do and your name. Make it simple. Make sure your contact information is easily accessible. No contact forms. That's just friction for the hiring manager to contact you. Best case scenario, your contact information is on the footer of every page of your site. Maybe you put it somewhere else, but it should just be on every page. And you don't need to do like a ton of details, like your address. Do not put your address on there unless you want spammers and stalkers. But something as simple as like your email address and maybe city and state or country. Um, if you are going for remote roles, then you might hide the city and state because that can disqualify you, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But just having your email and like your LinkedIn, if you want to share related stuff of Instagram and Twitter or anything else like that, that's fine. Just make it easy for people to get to. I do recommend not making your email a link because bots can easily spam you that way. So just have a plain text that people can copy and paste into an email. Finally, your portfolio. Is it a template? Well, of course, in general, it's a template because hopefully you used consistency in your design. But I'm talking about like Behance has like one template, or I must admit, Squarespace. I can recognize a Squarespace portfolio a mile away. Try not to be like, yeah, I'm a designer and I used a template that everybody else used. UX Folio has some pretty standard templates. So you want to have a little more creative freedom there. It will take longer to build your portfolio because you're deciding on your template and your design, but in the end, it's well worth it. As I said, I don't recommend something like Squarespace or UX Folio or anything like that. But take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm not the like Dalai Lama of UX portfolios. I don't know if that's quite the right metaphor there, but these are just things I've seen from being a hiring manager myself, as well as reviewing many, many, many portfolios.